2, 3. Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. My name is Richard Dent and I am your MC for today's meeting of the Rotary Club of Melbourne. Our club is based in Melbourne and we would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation and pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians, including those who are present here today. Please note that most microphones have been muted for the duration of this presentation. Of course, accolades, comments and questions can be posted via the Zoom chat function throughout the presentation. Also a reminder that our fighting fund continues in relation to particularly the current COVID-19 crisis, and your donation in lieu of lunch supports our activities. There are many impacts in the communities that some of us are not necessarily experiencing firsthand. The link for that donation is published in the Club Bulletin Weekly. Thanks today will be given by past President Peter Dakin, followed by the loyal toast presented by the wonderful President Marion McLeod. Please ensure that your glass or other appropriate vessel is charged for the toast. Peter.
Thanks very much, Richard, and good afternoon, Rotarians and guests, and of course my fellow Demon supporters. Very happy time. Look, we're all saddened by the ongoing impact that COVID-19 is having on our elderly citizens, particularly in aged care facilities. Many of us know friends and loved ones being cared for in these facilities, and our thoughts go out to some of our current and past members in this regard, including past Presidents Jack Melbourne and Murray Campbell, as well as other fine Rotarians Keith Briley and Jill Hibbins, and there's possibly a couple of others that I might have missed. It's extremely disappointing to hear the constant criticism of the aged care sector when the very large percentage of operators, their management and caring nursing staff are committed to supporting our frail and elderly, many of whom are suffering with dementia. We thank and give encouragement to our own Sandra Hills, the CEO of Benetas, and Robin Syme for his extraordinary commitment over many years with Mecwa Care. The Rotary Club of Melbourne, through our health and ageing committees, have and continue to support numerous projects for the elderly, including Claremont Homes in South Melbourne, now known as Casper Care and Emerald Residential. Our wonderful involvement with Claremont Home dates back to 1974. And it's interesting to note that $166,000 was raised at this time as our first cluster project in conjunction with the Rotary Clubs of Melbourne South, Port Melbourne, St Kilda and Paran. It's been a fine example of service above self by so many of our members for over 40 years, including past chairs of Claremont, John DeVere, who employed the first nurse in 1988, John Kendall, Max Barr, who's great to see again today, and Peter Manger. Jack Rutter was treasurer for 12 years. I recall the CEO of Mecwa Care addressing our club well over 10 years ago about the need to ensure aged care was a happy and rewarding experience. And let's hope we can move from negativity surrounding the sector to something far more positive, as most of us are heading down this track. Thank you, and over to you, Marion.
Thank you, Peter. Rotarians and guests, a toast to Australia and Rotary International. Australia and Rotary International.
Australia and Rotary International.
Members, visitors and guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our 8th meeting of the Rotary year and the 4,855th in our club's history. I believe we have some overseas guests with us today, including Nesta Hatendi, the past president of Rotary Club of Highlands in Harare, Zimbabwe, who is a personal friend of past President Robert Fisher. And we also have Robert's mentee, Jenna Sue, who is one of the students in our Rotary City of Melbourne International Resume Project. We've also got Catherine Rodriguez from the Rotary Club of Carlton and Jan Grail from the Rotary Club of Bangkok. So welcome to you all. Our guest speaker today is the Honourable Philip Dalidakis, the former Minister of Innovation and Digital Economy, Victoria, the Director, Centre for Asia Pacific Strategy, and he's speaking on Victoria's post-COVID economic resurgence to a digital economy. Philip will be more formally introduced later in the programme by our Chair of the Day, Ari Talantis. Also waiting online, we have Dasun Premadasa, who will be inducted into the club shortly. Would you please join me in making our guest speaker, our guests, and all other visitors to our club today welcome. Thank you, everyone. And now to the induction of Dasun Premadasa into membership of Rotary Melbourne. I'd like to ask Dasun's sponsor, past President Quinn Scalzo, to formally introduce Dasun to the club.
Good afternoon, members and guests. It's my pleasure to introduce Dasun Premadasa to the Rotary Club of Melbourne. Dasun's work role is that of a global senior IT analyst for Treasury Wine Estates, a current topic, located in Commerce Street, Melbourne. Growing in Sri Lanka, he has worked for IT companies while living in the United States and UK prior to moving to Australia in 2007. He has over 20 years of experience working for a large organisation in fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG, automotive and healthcare industries, and would like to share his experience in the time undertaking Rotary activities and projects. He has a tertiary qualification in IT and currently completing a Master of Business Administration from Queensland University. So Dasun is married to Denise, and we welcome you today, and I hand over to President Marion for the induction. Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. Dasun Premadasa, we welcome you as a member of the Rotary Club of Melbourne. Today, you enter an organisation of more than 1.2 million members in over 35,000 clubs in more than 200 countries, embracing the internationality of Rotary. We believe that you have the personal and professional qualities that will ensure the principles of Rotary will be safe in your keeping. The Rotary badge, which I hope you will wear with pride and has been couriered to you, my apologies for not being able to hand it to you in person, indicates your commitment to the object of Rotary to which we all aspire, to encourage the ideal of service above self. We expect that you will become an ambassador from us to the community in which you live, and we ask that you convey Rotary's aims in all that you do. We look forward to your pursuing with us the great work of Rotary. So with this expectation, we all offer you the right hand of fellowship and ask that members join me in welcoming you to the membership of our club. Welcome. If you would like to respond briefly, Dasun.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and Quinn, thanks for the introduction as well, Marion especially. It's interesting. I never thought the day I joined my induction to Rotary will be over a Zoom call, because I have been part of the Rotary movement for over 10 years before I left Sri Lanka, and it's always been one of the objectives I've wanted to achieve, to become a Rotarian since I joined Interact movement in 1997. Why Rotary family? Why joining Rotary family is actually something that was very close to me. Growing up in a country with a civil war, we always focused on helping the community. There were so many people that in need of help and support from others. So what I actually saw in Rotary is the community service and the support that at global level that we provide to people in need is admirable. And also me being passionate about being able to help people, Rotary allowed me to do it in a grand scale. Individually, there are limitations in how much we can achieve and how much we can help people. but as an organization with like-minded people all together, we can do it at a much more larger scale. So I always have grand plans. I actually initially started by I want to help 1,000 people before I die, but it became hundreds of those people. And I think these days I'm talking about, yeah, I'd like to help at least 1 billion people. So this is something I may not be able to achieve before I meet my creator, but I believe that I'll try to do it as much as I can, help everyone through Rotary and live by the values of Rotary, and also be part of the Rotary Club, because this is one of those things I can actually look back when everybody's talking about doom and gloom during COVID. I always say that's always best things, good things can come out of this as well. So this day, me joining the Rotary family will be one of those positives during this COVID lockdown period. So I would like to thank everyone, and I'm really happy to be part of the Rotary family, especially joining such a prestigious club in Australia, and looking forward to meeting you all in person in the future. So thank you very much.
We're delighted to have you, Dasun, and we're looking forward to all those projects, to have you championing all those projects that you were talking about.
Thank you.
So we now have another vignette to share with you this week. This time it's the Smith family around the Bay project with Trevor Nink. This is in lieu of the event which was unfortunately cancelled in its original format this year. And it's our largest volunteering event, thanks to the great work of the members of the club's Community Welfare Committee, who have forged these strong relationships. So I think Reg is about to.
Today we talk about the Around the Bay project, which supports the Smith family's Learning for Life program. We're now into our second decade of supporting young kids from disadvantaged families. Our Rotary project supports the Learning for Life program for young children. It's held in October each year in either the first or second Sunday. It is run by Bicycle Network and incorporates up to 10,000 riders.
Reg,
there are opportunities for Rotarians in volunteering, awareness of social needs, and fundraising for education.
I think we've had
the Rotary involvement for Melbourne is its yearly biggest calendar event. Rotarians, families and friends all participate. Bicycle Network pays our volunteers either $50 or $100 per person. Rotarians and friends sponsor Team Rotary. All funds raised go.
I think we might drop out of the vignette and just go through the notices. It looks as though we've lost the actual video there. So we might come back to that. In the meantime, we might reflect on our next key Rotary moment as we travel through our 100th anniversary year. So this is the Did You Know? This one is Father Jeremiah Murphy. He was one of the first Catholics to join the Rotary Club and was a Jesuit father. He was the rector of Newman College in the University of Melbourne, and he served there for over 30 years from 1923 until 1954. He was the longest serving rector of Newman College, which had 12 since its inception in 1918. He was considered a delightful person, friendly, urbane, witty, and a great conversationalist. And members used to vie with each other to sit at his table to enjoy his company. He was also nominated to our club by Professor Osborne. So now we might go through the notices. The first of those is a valet for our former member, John Reynolds. He was a very valued member of our club. He joined in 1982 and was with the Malvern Group for over 35 years. And there's an in memoriam for John being organised by the group captain of the Malvern Group, that's Sharon Johnson. That will be in early September. And if anybody wants to join that event, if you could please contact Sharon Johnson. I also wanted to highlight in the last several weeks that many Australians have been impacted by fear, anxiety, and panic about coronavirus. And I think Peter Dakin mentioned this in his introduction. There's a heightened state of anxiety, panic, and depression, anger, confusion, and uncertainty that's prevailing in our community. And the Black Dog Institute has highlighted this struggle with uncertainty in a report that they've done. And it says that this can lead us to behave in ways that are disproportionate and unkind. So I'm just suggesting that we all think about that and approach everything we do with other members of our club with generosity and kindness in mind. And remember that a problem shared is a problem halved. So reach out to someone if you have any of the aforementioned feelings, or possibly come along and join our coffee club on a Friday morning. In the last few days, we've had a number of clubs reach out to us, and they've recognized much of the same sorts of feelings in our community. And I conveyed our gratitude on behalf of our club to 3 in particular that thought about us last week. The first was past President Keith McNeil's Brisbane High Rise Club, and President Margot Bailey sent their best wishes to us during this lockdown period. The next was the president of the Rotary Club of Sandringham, Jackie Wells. They raised a glass and toasted our club as part of their efforts to extend good thoughts to the clubs around Australia and the globe in these trying times. And also from the Rotary Club of Hitchin Prior in the UK, President Peter Hull extended their best wishes to us. These powerful but small gestures are significant, and it highlights the internationality and the friendship of Rotary across the world. A reminder that our AGM nominating committee, the date of the Rotary Club of Melbourne's AGM has now been fixed as the 18th of November 2020. Formal notices will be issued in due course, and we've called for nominations for 3 candidates to be elected by the members, and we've had 3 who have nominated. Any additional nominations can be made by a member in writing, with each nomination being signed by the nominator and another member, and each must carry acceptance of the nomination signed by the member nominated. No past president is eligible for nomination by the members, and no member who has twice accepted membership on the nominating committee is eligible for service in any subsequent year, except as a presidential officer. Nominations must be made by 2:10 next Wednesday, the 26th of August. And nomination forms and any questions can be directed to our Honorary Secretary, Russell Board. Some repeat notices. Our coffee morning continues on Zoom. It's at 10:30 each Friday. The details are in the bulletin. And we're also using this coffee morning to allow newer members to test and play with the technical side of Zoom so that they can upskill in Zoom. We're also continuing to offer some training in the technology, and anybody who's interested, please contact Reg Smith. We're also continuing to look for the holiday snaps that we can put together with some music at the end of our meeting. So if you have any, please send those to Joe. This is in an attempt to keep our spirits up until we go traveling again. So please send those to Joe. I might just check with Reg. Have we got the video ready to roll now or not?
I think we should be right now. I think 2 of us were trying to share it once before, Marion, and held the video.
Excellent, excellent. So now to our vignette around the Bay in a day.
Today we talk about the Around the Bay project, which supports the Smith family's Learning for Life program. We're now into our 2nd decade of supporting young kids from disadvantaged families. Our Rotary project supports the Learning for Life program for young children. It's held in October each year in either the 1st or 2nd Sunday. It is run by Bicycle Network and incorporates up to 10,000 riders. There are opportunities for Rotarians in volunteering, awareness of social needs, and fundraising for education. The Rotary involvement for Melbourne is its yearly biggest calendar event. Rotarians, families and friends all participate. Bicycle Network pays our volunteers either $50 or $100 per person. Rotarians and friends sponsor Team Rotary. All funds raised go to the Smith family to provide scholarships for the at-risk children. Here you will see our volunteers at work, either guiding the riders on the route, actually the Team Rotary riders themselves, the drivers who drive the support and gear wagons, and the people who man the refreshment tents. At the end of the day's work, you will see that we have a great opportunity after starting early on the Sunday morning to get together afterwards and socialise when our work is over. The outcome is that Rotary is the largest volunteer group and heavily relied upon by Bicycle Network to run this bike event. We end up with significant partnerships with the Smith family and Bicycle Network. Last year we had 8 riders. We have a volunteering program, sponsorship, a raffle, and an auction. This provides over $20,000 to the Smith family each year. There are scholarships that go to the kids to reach their educational potential. It also includes promotion of Rotary service above self. Riders have Rotary jerseys and marshals have Rotary safety events. Here you'll see the partners: Port Melbourne Rotary, E-Club Rotary, Williamstown Rotary, Yarraville Rotary, Albert Park Rotary, and Rotary Melbourne. If you want to find more about the event, so please make contact with either Jim Orchard, Trevor Nink, Philip Endesby, and Chris Wong. With the ride cancelled this year, our project will still go on even better. Stay tuned for what's going to happen next.
Thank you for that, Trevor. And if anybody has any projects or activities that they'd like Nina Hunter, Peter Wischusen or Kerry Kornheiser to put a vignette together for them, please contact that group. It is now my pleasure to hand over this meeting to today's chair, Ali Talantis, to further introduce today's guest speaker.
Hello all. Today I am delighted to introduce Philip Dalidakis, who served as Minister for Small Business, Innovation and Trade, and then as Minister for Trade, Investment, Innovation, the Digital Economy and Small Business till 2018. After that, he took on a role at Australia Post as Executive General Manager, Corporate Services. Philip is an interesting person. He has a Rotary background, I found out. His father was a long-standing member of the Rotary Club of Glenara, and Philip was a Rotary exchange student that led him to Thailand. And I believe he speaks Thai, so it must have really left an impact on him. Today, as I was looking through Philip's social networks, social media, I found that his favourite quote is, "It's always the right time to do the right thing," which I think is really pertinent. And over to you, Philip, when you'll be speaking on Victoria's post-COVID economic resurgence through a digital economy. Thank you.
So thanks very much for having me. And I'm only sorry that I can't obviously be with all of you in person because getting together and the fellowship is one of the great things that Rotary brings communities together by, and not just the work that it does in the community. And from that perspective, I do have a long-standing relationship with Rotary that goes back to 1994, when I was an exchange student from District 9800 into the northeast of Thailand, into a town called Udon Thani in the northeast, the largest city in the northeast, and loved my time there. And to this day, obviously, wedding and children's births excluded, it remains my fondest memory to my life to date, including my time in public office. So when we get to Q&A, if there are any questions there, I'd be more than happy to take them as well. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land of which we meet and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging as well. Can I also pay respect to all of the members of Rotary and their families that have been assisting and participating in the response to COVID-19, whether it be just here in Australia or around the world through your friends and family beyond our shores. It's going to be with us for a long time, and our economic response, which I'm about to touch upon, is going to be one that will have more twists and turns than a snakes and ladders game. And the things that we learn about today are going to hold us in good stead for tomorrow. And one of the things that I want to start with is that the work rules have changed. And as a community, we need to adapt to that, whether it be working from home, which I believe we'll be doing at least until the end of this year, if not rules changing about working from home into next year, 2021, whether it be about businesses digitalising and providing opportunities for their employees post-COVID-19 to continue that opportunity to work from home. And of course, everybody's different. And so I'll draw upon one of my experiences at Australia Post. When I was at AP, I came into a workforce where there had been some considerable disruption over the previous 2 years prior to me joining. And one of the things that I needed to do was talk about the culture of the teams that I inherited. A small thing was fixed desks versus hot desking. And most of the teams that worked in the group that I managed, legal, corporate secretarial, communications, regulatory affairs, they were effectively people that came in and out every day, and unless they were part-time, of course. So there were some people that loved the flexibility of hot desking. There are others that liked the rigid knowledge of coming in each day to a set seat, to a set assigned desk. And then there were others, of course, that were pretty carefree and could go with the flow either way. Point being is that today's manager needs to be able to have that flexibility to be able to adjust to what their people need to ensure that you get the best out of them. For some people, that will be easy to do. For others and other industries, that will be a far more difficult task. You can't see a dentist virtually. You can't do some work behind your desk at home all the time. And of course, people being people, we crave interaction with other human beings. As much as I love seeing you all on Zoom, there's nothing like being able to be in the same room, work off the energy that the room provides you, being able to shake hands, kiss old friends and give them hugs and have that personal connection. And that's something that the government has tried to address with the significant investment that they've put into mental health issues. And it would be remiss of me not to mention that really near the top of my speech. The economic imperative is without a doubt something that is intrinsically linked to the mental health well-being of people, whether they are small business owners, whether they are PAYG employees. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we provide the support to people that can get it when they need it. And if you have a look at the statistics at the moment, unfortunately and sadly, suicides continue to be significant in the community, and it appears that they may well be continuing that trend for some time to come. And if you have a look at the reasons for it, it's not too difficult to understand. Now, I am going to make a broad assumption, and forgive me because there may be some people that will be upset with me for making this assumption. The assumption I'm confident that I can make is that most people on this call are well off, that we have an opportunity to survive through COVID through a variety of ways, through strong fiscal management of our own personal budgets, through the opportunity and the positioning that we've put our own businesses in, or otherwise. But the vast majority of people out there, sadly, don't necessarily have that level of comfort. They come from a position where they literally go from paycheck to paycheck. They work to a just-in-time schedule where money comes in, money goes out. We've seen, of course, the tragic consequences for small business in particular, where they can't pay rent because they're not occupying their premises. This is where the digitalisation of the economy, unless they're in a direct services-based industry like a cafe or a restaurant, will become critical for them. I'm a director of an ASX-listed company. We have already, in the last few months, downsized our footprint across both Australia and Asia Pacific. We've had to do that because we've had to respond not just to a significant reduction in revenue, but also we've needed to manage our cost controls accordingly and recognise that having a footprint in terms of physical space is not necessarily going to be the way that we move forward as a business and respond to the issues with COVID. So work rules have changed. Businesses need to adapt. We need to digitalise, reduce our cost base. We need to change our overheads and we need to be able to increase our margins where we can, because ultimately doing that gives ourselves the best opportunity to be profitable and gives us the best opportunity to survive what is really, and apologies for using a much used word at the moment, it is unprecedented. We have gone through the global financial crisis of 2007, 2008. I remember the recession of 1991 as a 15-year-old and seeing what it did to family mortgage rates with my own parents. I have experienced tremendous personal loss through the bushfires of 2009 when I was the chief executive of the timber industry here in Victoria, and seen what natural disasters can do and how it can impact a community well beyond those directly affected. But this is unprecedented, well beyond anything other than probably a global war in terms of disruption to our lives and disruption to our markets. And so the response to it from both government and business will have to be hand in glove. We will have to see the state government and the federal government working together in a way we have never witnessed before. And if people think that the National Cabinet at the moment is working or not working, it'll be interesting to hear. What I'm telling you, for us to survive as a community, that National Cabinet and the collegiality that will have to be seen between leaders, without a doubt, has to be of the primacy in response. And I'll take you through it. The first thing is regulatory reform and cross-border reform. When I was Small Business Minister, I undertook a cross-border reform trial in Albury and Wodonga with the Federal Small Business Minister, who's a very dear friend of mine, Craig Laundy, and the New South Wales Deputy Premier, who was Small Business Minister at the time, John Barilaro. The idea that the normal rules, and by the way, it's a bit of irony that I start with cross-border regulatory reform when we're not allowed to cross any borders at the moment at all. Victoria is a bit of a pariah state, of course, and I hope in time that that gets relaxed. But in Albury and Wodonga, for example, if you are a staff member in a publican's premises in Wodonga and they have a pub in Albury and they're short-staffed and they say, hey, can you just go over? It could be literally 5 kilometres away. Can you go and work in the pub over there? Previously, prior to setting up this cross-border regulatory reform, they would have had to go and get 2 different types of serving with alcohol approvals and licenses, right? In 2020, that's no longer the case, but back then, only 2-3 years ago, it was. Same thing with taxis. You could grab a taxi from one city, cross the border into another, and that taxi driver was not authorised or allowed to pick somebody up to go back across the border. Simple things, but have meaningful impact on people's lives. And what we need to do is make sure that we're removing a lot of that red tape, that regulatory impediment, to enable businesses and people to function, because coming out of COVID, we need to make things as easy as possible. By the way, for those of you interested, I will finish on taxation reform. So I'm not avoiding that topic, and I'll give you some examples of taxation reform that needs to go on. But I've talked about food serving, alcohol serving, taxis. Also, things like heavy duty machinery require different regulatory controls. So we need to get better at managing those. It's a small example, but as you can see, when the borders were closed, nearly all of the media within the first 48 to 72 hours dealt with cross-border towns. And again, a key example here, for those of you that are unaware, is the hospital system, because we've already had cross-border healthcare whereby Victorians and New South Wales governments work together in providing, or the provision of healthcare to cross-border towns, and we have reciprocal services and costings included. I want to jump onto service delivery public sector reform. There has to be public sector reform leading the way. Public sector always provides a guidance to the private sector about what we do and how we do it, and then private sector responds accordingly. At the moment, probably the key service leader in this is Services New South Wales. I don't have time to go into why, but I can assure you that Services New South Wales, led by the New South Wales Minister up there, Dominello, is without a doubt leading both data services, customer service digitally, responding, and Victor Dominello has done a great job, and I'm a big fan of the work that he's done in this space. But all governments, all state jurisdictions and federal government need to lead with that. And you've seen the federal government in the last 12 months indicate that they want to take the Services New South Wales model into Services Australia, and we need to wish them all the success in that. I notice it's 1:40, and I do want to leave time for some Q&A. Taxation reform has to be a critical part of the response to a post-COVID environment. I know that I've brushed over a little bit of digital. I'll come back to digital in a moment, but I do want to spend some time on tax reform because I don't want to lose time at the end without having done it. Small businesses in the community when I was minister, and it's largely the same figures, probably 1 or 2% out, so forgive me, but small businesses make up roughly around 96% of all businesses in Victoria, right? However, they only make up about 47% of employment. So think about that, 3 to 4% of business employs 53% of all people. Now that means that whatever our response needs to be, it needs to focus on the SME sector without a doubt. But we also need to make sure that we don't lose sight of big business and big enterprise as well. It's a fine tightrope to walk, but we need to make sure that we do it. So this is why I said to you, state and federal government have to work together in a way that they haven't done for a long time. Whatever state government does, it is literally a drop in the ocean in terms of the tax reform system. So if you have a look at payroll tax, for example, and the figures for FY20 have not yet come out, but if you have a look at the last financial year of 2019, payroll tax was only 6.2 billion of Victoria's revenue. Stamp duty was 6 billion. Land tax was only $3.5 billion. So it doesn't matter what reforms Victoria does to payroll tax and stamp duty in particular, and land tax, we need to make sure that we're doing something that targets business, because of course state governments are largely responsible for what they do there, but also the federal government working hand in glove with state governments because of what they do for individual taxation at the same point. Because we are going to have to, and I've never subscribed to a view that the cart or the horse, the chicken or the egg is the employee or the business, or either or. You need both. It's a symbiotic relationship. You can't have one without the other. You can't focus on one without dealing with the other. You need to make sure that your public policy response deals with all areas. It can't be one faceted, because otherwise what happens then is a pendulum swings too far one way, and what happens when it swings too far one way, it will swing too far the other. So we need to make sure that we keep things centrally focused as much as we can. The federal government needs to respond to the individual, and state governments need to help respond to business. So at this point, I'm happy if you all want to unmute your microphones with what I'm about to say, and you can applaud this. When I said it, Minister, I was off quoted. I repeat it today. I will repeat it until I have my last breath before I die. I hate payroll tax with a passion. The person that invented payroll tax, if we could go back in time and find them and just keep them quiet just for that moment, it would be a wonderful thing. It is literally an impediment to businesses employing people. To think that the more people you employ and the more that you pay somebody, the more tax you have to pay, is really the antithesis of supporting growth and investment in the area. However, we also need to recognise that payroll tax on its own is not an impediment to businesses being successful. I would often say that if a small business is financially unstable and believes that payroll tax is the only thing standing behind it, between it rather, to being profitable or being obviously put into administration, then I will show you a business model that is unsustainable. That doesn't mean to say we shouldn't address it, but it needs to be done proportionately. So number one, I would continue to reduce payroll tax as the Treasurer has done, both while I was a minister and since I've left Parliament. I would completely do away with payroll tax in regional Victoria. And if that means some businesses relocate from Melbourne into the regions, I'm okay with that too. There are going to be some intended consequences. There are going to be some unintended consequences, but we can manage those and we can be prepared for it. It's not as if payroll tax came up yesterday and we don't know what it does or how it operates. Secondly, at payroll tax for $6 billion on annual revenue, if I was the Treasurer, I would be looking at putting some kind of economic stimulus plan that would see payroll tax voided for nearly every small business customer in Victoria for a minimum of 12, if not 24 months. Certainly the next 12 months for the next budget, I would void payroll tax. I would also do something about land tax. I wouldn't do something about stamp duty at this point, because stamp duty is a transaction tax. Whereas land tax, if you do something with land tax because there are people that use property and investment to encourage stimulus, I would then create a policy or have a look at a policy that deals with land tax for businesses that pass those savings on to their lessees. So if you do that, then you're passing through. Just in the same way that rent reduction has been provided through various jurisdictions, and hopefully that gets through to the landlord as well. It needs to be addressed. We can't have a system where one person is winning and another person is losing. We are literally, and forgive me for saying this, we are literally all in this together. And if we don't come out of this together, if we leave people behind, then we are going to create intergenerational poverty and despair, the likes that we have not seen. And Australia has managed to avoid most of the problems that the United States has in particular, the welfare system. We've had a mess because we've tried to make sure that the policies that we've implemented, yes, ensure that we have slightly higher costs of operations, but at the same time, we get more for that as a society and as a community. Now, 15 minutes to go, I was asked to talk a little bit about cybersecurity as well, data analytics and what that means. In terms of the digital economy, I love the digital economy portfolio. It was one of my favorite portfolios. We have some amazing companies that you may never have heard of. Obviously, everyone here will have heard of car sales and Seek and realestate.com.au. But have you heard of, for example, Cultramp? Or have you heard of Airwallex or 99 Designs? These are Australian companies that have gone around the world and back again and are hugely successful. We also, for example, Nitro PDF. Nitro PDF, for those people that don't know it, is a competitor to Adobe. It has got more functionality than Adobe. It is cheaper than Adobe. And it was started by Australians who left Australia to San Francisco and now have engineering bases in Dublin as well, and have done an amazing job. But why don't people use Nitro PDF? Because of course, no one got ever sacked for hiring IBM. Same thing, everyone knows what Adobe is. People aren't necessarily aware of what Nitro PDF is. So we need to get better as governments to supporting local ingenuity and making sure that people that have that ingenuity are supported. We've seen people talk about manufacturing more at home to try and secure our medical supplies, for example. Well, if you're going to try and look at those kind of reverse engineering policies in the manufacturing sector, it's not too much of a difference to have governments look at trying to factor in supporting the building of new industries here at home. But to do that, we need to move away from lowest cost wins. We need to look at life cycle. We need to look at investment and opportunities, employment and growth as well. Cyber, massive issue. I could do another talk on cyber alone and the challenges that we face. Back in 2011 and 12, when I was the Deputy Chief of Staff to Senator Conroy at the time, I had responsibility for cybersecurity as an industry policy. When I became Minister, I looked after cybersecurity as an industry policy here in Victoria. We created the Oceania Cybersecurity Centre. We did a deal with Data 61 that saw them create their cybersecurity hub here in Victoria. We brought in the Oxford University's Global Cybersecurity Capacity Centre model. The first time Oxford had collaborated outside of Oxford University, they set up an office here in Melbourne and collaborated with the OCSC. We did MOUs with the state of Virginia. Believe it or not, it's actually called the Commonwealth of Virginia, something I learnt when I was a minister. We have more Commonwealths than just our own, albeit they operate uniquely in the US. We did MOUs into Israel. Cybersecurity continues to be of topic, even though a lot of people don't understand it. I did a speech at a small business conference about 3 years ago. I asked all the small business owners how many of them, for example, had their data, their client customer data, on the same laptop or computer that they did their financial transactions with their banking, as well as potentially their FPOS transactions with their customers if they owned a retail business, etc. Almost no one put their hands up. It was quite surprising until, of course, people came up to me at the end of the speech and spoke to me privately and said, I'm going to have to go back and ask that question because I don't know. Right? We are exposed in ways that people don't actually understand. And the fear is the damage that could be done into our economy as we're looking to recover post-COVID as well. 5G, the issue of 5G, of course, is closely linked with Huawei, the Chinese telecommunications company. I have to be careful with what I say because I did receive both briefings, national security briefings when I worked for Senator Conroy, even though it was nearly 8 years ago now, and also as a minister here in Victoria. What I can say is that the federal government's position on this is sound. It is not something that they woke up one morning and said, how can we face a competitor that happens to come from China that is the cheapest competitor, and how can we not take advantage of that price and size and scale in our own market? That's not what the federal government did. I am at one with Minister Dutton and the Prime Minister on this. It is of concern, and the federal government should be applauded for its stance, as should the federal opposition for supporting the federal government and not playing politics. TikTok's an interesting one. We've seen a divergence of views. We've seen the federal government say nothing to see here, we're okay with it. We've seen the US government, obviously through President Trump, expressed deep reservations over TikTok, including potentially banning it if there's not a foreign sale of the US arm of TikTok. The concern, of course, about TikTok is the ability for it to geotag people in videos where they are, and also to take your face and also recognize what you are, who you are, what you're doing, where you're doing it, and to put that in algorithms that then can take advantage of that. However, to be able to do that, they need to have access to a whole range of other systems as well, which is why I think you've seen a lot more caution by the federal government here at home about the capacity for the for other state actors to inappropriately use that data. And then finally, what does this mean for all of you? Well, what it will mean for all of you will be very different, because it will depend upon what businesses you operate in, what sectors you compete in, how you operate already, and also the likelihood of you being directly impacted. Do you run, for example, a consultancy at home? Do you run a retail business? Do you run a business that operates in the city of Melbourne that is not likely to have traffic in it well into 2021? There are a whole range of issues that we as a society will need to come to grips with, but at the beginning of it will be the response, the economic response, the social response by the state and the federal government. And councils will have a role to play here, but we need to be able to make sure that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Councils, local government authorities have the closest links with our community. State government next so, and then the federal government beyond. We need to see all three arms of government working together. And I can tell you, even though I'm out of public life in terms of politically, I do believe that there's a role for all three arms of government to work collaboratively and do their respective service delivery. Because if you don't have one doing a service, yes, you have some duplication in administration, etc., but the service lines are often not duplicated. I don't quite understand why we have some departments at a federal level when state governments are responsible for service delivery in those. However, that's potentially another issue to do with federation for another time. We can get through this, but we will only get through this if we are all working together.
Thank you, Philip. That was comprehensive and it answered many questions, especially one that I always have had is why can't all three levels of governments work together? We have a couple of questions, one from past President Robert Fisher, who wants to know, do you see a time where we will all be working in offices again and travelling interstate to go to meetings, or will it remain, you know, working from home and video conferencing, and which one's more important?
Okay, so I absolutely hope so. I'm one of those people that craves interaction with other human beings. And I'm not too proud to admit there are times that I'm really struggling with being stuck at home as well, although, you know, what better chance do I have of 3 young children and my wife to be stuck at home with? So that's a win. I'm only saying that because my wife's actually in the same room that I'm giving this speech to you all. So although she's told me she's not listening, even though she heard me say that. So I think we will, there will come a time when there will be a degree of normalcy about how we move and when we move. I can't see it happening soon. It will take some time, but we will get there. In terms of where we go, and it really depends upon the ability to get a vaccine. I'll be pleasantly surprised if that a vaccine comes out. I think in much the same way that we get flu injections every year, the flu injections don't stop you from catching the flu. What they do is they severely restrict the impact the flu will have on you if you do catch it. I think that's where we're probably heading towards a COVID vaccine, because as we've seen, there's been a lot of commentary over the last little while about how the virus mutates and changes. And I think that that's probably going to be a fact of life, but this will require us to make changes to the way we do business and the way that we interact with people. I think masks are here till the end of the year as a minimum. And I think that if we do a couple of those changes, then we'll be able to start seeing life return to some sort of semblance to what it was pre-2020.
Thank you. I don't think we have time for any more questions today. I'd just like to thank you once again. Thank you from everyone. And to let you know that you will receive in the mail a wonderful pair of socks, the R100 socks. And what they are is Rotary in Australia and New Zealand will be celebrating 100 years. And our club member, Phil Endersby, and Wilderness Wear is making these socks. So you will be one of the lucky ones to receive them. Thank you so much. Over to you, Marion.
Thank you. Thank you to our MC, Richard Dent. Our thank you from Peter Dakin and our chairman, Ari Talantis, and especially to our guest speaker, Philip Dalidakis, who has taken us over 100 participants today. So well done, Philip. Thank you. Thank you also to all our members, visitors and guests for attending, and a quick reminder to send in that favorite holiday snap. All that's left for me to do is to give you a reminder that next week's meeting will be a members' lunch featuring District Governor Philip Archer and some club project profiles, and also to highlight the fact that our meeting on Wednesday, the 2nd of September, will actually be held from 2:30 to 3:30, and that's to accommodate our very special guest speaker, Chief Medical Officer Brett Sutton. So please join us now as I close the meeting with an interesting take on the Swan Lake Ballet, this time in a bathtub. Please enjoy, and in the meantime, stay safe and spread kindness. Thank you.